So, it's been a while. Hello and welcome to SPINSTER'S Library. I'm Claudia, and I barely remember how to do this. Is the camera running? What am I doing here? What is a book? I have returned from the cold, dark depths of real life and a full-time job to announce the 9th Jane Austen July. That's right, 9th year running. If Jane Austen July was a child, she'd be old enough, maybe not to read Jane Austen quite yet, but definitely to watch Pride and Prejudice 1995 with Mummy. Yes, here we are again. Some of you might have wondered what I've been up to these past 2 months. For the both of you, I will maybe do a little life update at the end of the video. But first, let's get to the actual topic of this video. The reason why I charged my camera, dug out my lights, remembered that I have a bookshelf. Jane Austen July. What is it? I used to start this with Jane Austen July. It's a month-long readathon, but one of my lovely co-hosts, who are Marissa from Blatantly Bookish and Katie from Books and Things, links below, started saying is a month-long celebration of all things Austen. And I really like that, so I'm going to steal that. Jane Austen July is a month-long celebration of all things Austen. Like you didn't already know that. In case you genuinely didn't already know that, do check out my various Jane Austen July playlists from years past. So, off you go. Do have a look. Links in the description box, as usual. For the rest of you, let's get into this year's Jane Austen July. As always, there's only one thing you have to do to say you've participated in Jane Austen July to get the entirely metaphorical Jane Austen July badge. And that is, you guessed it, to read some Jane Austen. That is also our official challenge number 1. Read some Jane Austen. Her 6 published novels are, say it with me, Northanger Abbey, Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice. I always forget which one's after that. Mansfield Park, Emma, and Persuasion. I really hope I didn't forget one. Every year we have a group read, and this year's group read is Mansfield Park. Not gonna lie. Of course, the one time I do I can't even get this microphone off. Do we just ignore the doorbell? The problem is that the window's open. In case you didn't hear it, doorbell just rang. Nope. I think we just ignore that. So, I might go and close the curtain. Will this microphone reach? Why am I still recording with a cabled microphone like a caveman? This is perfectly normal behavior. I can't even remember. Mansfield Park, I don't like it. Am I going to read it? Probably. Because the group read in Jane Austen July is always just a really fun event. I always start the group read as long as everyone else. Sometimes I finish it quite a bit later because I'm not a fast reader. But if you too are not the biggest fan of Mansfield Park, give this one another chance. I certainly will. I'm trying so hard to say something nice about Mansfield Park. It's very long. I'm not selling Jane Austen here. Just see. Okay, it's not the Post. I'm pretty sure it's the mayoral candidate who's trying to get elected next month. So he's walking around with his wife, being all politician-y. This is going great. This is going fantastic. This is going absolutely amazingly well. So, Mansfield Park. This is so fucking cursed. Mansfield Park is essentially a Cinderella, okay? It's about Fanny Price, who is sent to live with rich relatives at Mansfield Park, where she is pretty much ignored or bullied by everyone except her first cousin. Let's not think about that, Edmund Bertram, who is nice to her. What more do you want in a man? The second challenge for Jane Austen July is to read something by Jane Austen that's not one of her 6 main novels. There's some choice here. Why did I not prepare a book to hold up to the camera? Because, as we've already established, I don't know how to do this anymore. Anyway, there are some choices there. My personal favorite is the epistolary novella that was published after Jane Austen's death called Lady Susan. It's Jane Austen, I think, at her sharpest, funniest, harshest. You always get the feeling there's a bit of a mean girl in Jane Austen, and in Lady Susan, that mean girl takes center stage. It's hilarious. There's also her unfinished novel Sanditon, which has been turned into an ITV series in years past. There's letters, there's juvenilia, there's fragments. This is the way to discover a little bit more of the unedited Austen, of the Austen that could have been, of the Austen that's might have continued writing into the Victorian era. Absolutely worth reading. But let's move on to challenge number 3. Read a non-fiction work about Jane Austen or her time. This is really, really broad. You can take that quite literally and read a book about Jane Austen, such as Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Wortley, a book which I haven't finished. I started it last Jane Austen July. I got to page 75, so this is going to be my book of choice for this year, I expect. It is a biography of Jane Austen. There's many biographies of Jane Austen. A book that I recommend year after year, even though I myself have had quite strong criticisms of it, is The Time Traveller's Guide to Regency Britain by Ian Mortimer. Check out my review video of that if you want to know why I can't full-heartedly recommend it. But it is still one of the best pop history books about the Regency period that I've read. You can read a book about literature, either Jane Austen's literature, there's many books discussing her works, or one that kind of made waves last year, which is Jane Austen's Bookshelf by, I want to say, Rebecca Romney, because of course I also didn't write that name down. Insert here. I'm pretty sure the author's name's Rebecca. This is a book that really made a splash last year because it discusses female authors who influenced Jane Austen, so women writers of her time and before her time who have had an impact on her. The thing is, with the emergence of something that in a previous video I called the Jane Austen industrial complex, there is an avalanche of literature around Jane Austen. Whatever topic interests you, you will find a book that takes that topic and makes it Austen. Cookbooks, papercraft books, books about gardening, interior design and crochet, any craft, art and hobby imaginable has sold by the power of Jane Austen's name on the cover. So really, this challenge, there is so much that you can pick from. And if you already know what you'll pick for that challenge, I'd be curious to hear, especially about the more eccentric picks, maybe the less popular ones, like the really niche Jane Austen related non-fiction books. Give me those. The next challenge is my personal favorite, and it is to read a retelling of a Jane Austen book or a work of historical fiction set in Jane Austen's time. Again, a huge, broad category. Over the past nearly a decade of doing Jane Austen July, I figured out my own tastes pretty well for that challenge, and I realized that what I don't like is what I call in-world fan fiction. So books that are set within the universe of Jane Austen's novels, though that is a category that's hugely popular. And one really prominent example of that is The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadler, which has just been turned into a BBC drama. There's also books like Longbourn by Jo Baker. That's another one that takes the novel of Pride and Prejudice and sets another story within or around it. Lots and lots and lots of books like that. I don't particularly care for them, although I do want to give them another try, maybe next year. However, there is also a whole world of Jane Austen retelling. So these are stories that are inspired by the plot of Jane Austen novels, but transport those novels into a new time and place. Last year, I read a lot of those. Again, do check out my Jane Austen July 2025 playlist for that. Here are just two ones that I enjoyed. Both of these are young adult retellings. We've got Ordinary Girls by Blair Thornburg, a kind of loosely inspired Sense and Sensibility retelling. And we have Emmett by Elsie Rosen, a more closely inspired Emma retelling. Again, both of them YA and set in the modern day. But again, there are so many of those kinds of retellings. The most well-known one for the older generation is probably Bridget Jones's Diary from the 90s. Not a book I recommend unless you really want to feel how far we've come. Or you can read a historical novel set in the Regency era. I have been very slowly making my way through Georgette Heyer's Regency romances. These were written in the middle of the last century, and they really generated the genre of Regency romance that is in recent years become popularized by Bridgerton. Last year, Was it last year? Maybe the year before that. Time is entirely meaningless. I read Venetia by Georgette Heyer and really enjoyed that, so that's definitely a recommendation. This year I've got another one of her books on my TBR, The Nonsuch. So that's probably going to be a little bit of Georgette Heyer sprinkled into my Jane Austen July reading. There's also, as I said, modern Regency romances that are very popular. Other than Bridgerton, last year I read A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, a very interesting and very well written Regency romance that plays with all the tropes of the genre while also throwing a really interesting discussion of gender into the mix, since the female protagonist is transgender. However, historical fiction set in Jane Austen's era does not have to be romance at all. Many of your favorite Victorian novels are set in the Regency. For example, my favorite book I love to hate, Wuthering Heights, which is not a romance but is set in Jane Austen's lifetime. So do have a look. Once again, whatever genre you like to read, you will find a book set in Jane Austen's life or inspired by Jane Austen. There's sci-fi retellings, there's thrillers set in the Regency, there's literary fiction, there is something for every taste and budget. Why did I say that? I should not be doing this. Let's move on to the next challenge and the final reading challenge, which is the trickiest of them to fulfill, because that is to read a book by a contemporary of Jane Austen. It is a truth universally acknowledged that no one writes like Jane Austen did. So if you go and you read something like Susan Ferrier or Maria Edgeworth, the sort of lady authors of the time that are usually recommended for fans of Jane Austen, you will be disappointed because they are not Austen in vibe, in quality, in storytelling. They are not Austen. So I would encourage you to cast your net a little bit wider. Now, last year I read, after years of not wanting to, I finally read a whole Sir Walter Scott novel, which is Ivanhoe. I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I wasn't expecting Austen, I didn't get Austen, but I got a really fun, adventurous story and I love that about Sir Walter Scott, that showed me the beginnings of a genre, the genre of historical fiction, essentially. The romanticization of the Middle Ages, the creation of a British, in this case an English mythology. Super fascinating. But again, there's lots of other things you can turn to. If you're into poetry, which I'm not, then you are in the right era, because all the romantic poets were contemporaries of Jane Austen. So you got your Byron, you got your Shelley. Speaking of Shelley, you have to read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. If you've not read it, this is an order. Read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley this Jane Austen July. You will not regret it. If you do regret it, it's a short little book, okay? Like, it's tiny. You might want to read something from another country. So to rep my own home country here, let me suggest a Goethe. This is an edition of Faust that I found in a second-hand shop here. I'm gonna just nerd out for the Germans a little bit. This is a Reklam edition, right? Can you see that? This is a Reklam. What a downgrade from this to that. Anyway, have a look around. There will be more choice for this challenge than you think there will be. How long have I been recording? Oh my goodness, 25 minutes. This video stops at 30. Okay, let's go to the watching challenges. The first watching challenge is a pretty obvious one. Watch a Jane Austen adaptation. What can I tell you? There is a new one coming out this year, and that is Netflix's Pride and Prejudice. But unfortunately, that's going to be post Jane Austen July. That's not going to be out until the autumn. I'm still going to watch it as soon as it comes out, make no mistake. People are really cynical about that one, but I'm quite excited. I don't need to talk about adaptations because you all have your favorites. I have mine, my favorites. Pride and Prejudice 1995, Emma, both the 2008 miniseries and the 2020 film I really like. Netflix's Persuasion 2022, obviously. I can do this. Netflix's Persuasion. Netflix's Persuasion 20. Let's move on.
Sometimes I have this dream that a giant octopus is sucking my face.
The final challenge. If at this point you're asleep, wake up, because we've changed it. Yes, we have actually expanded the final challenge a little bit. It used to be watch a modern adaptation of a Jane Austen novel. However, there's so much new, fresh Jane Austen content coming out on film and TV that doesn't fit that we want to include in Jane Austen July. We've expanded the definition to say, watch something related to Austen that isn't a direct adaptation. That still leaves your Clueless, your Lizzie Bennet diaries, your modern adaptations of Jane Austen novels, but what you also have is everything else. Documentaries and docudramas, like for example last year's Jane Austen Rise of a Genius, which was on the BBC. You also have adaptations of Austen-related books, like Miss Austen, starring Keely Hawes, or this year's adaptation of The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. And I'm going to tell you right away, even though I don't have any intentions of reading the book, I am certainly going to watch The Other Bennet Sister this Jane Austen July. I'm really weirdly excited about this adaptation, even though I haven't read the book and I have been told by people I trust that I wouldn't like the book. There's, like I said, so much. So go wild, type Jane Austen into your BBC iPlayer or into your Netflix or into your Amazon Prime and just see what happens, just see what you get. This was it, with only very little interruption from a guy in chinos and a beige blazer who I'm certainly not going to vote for. I managed to get through this Jane Austen July announcement video. This year's Jane Austen July is not going to be as involved as last year's for me. As I said, I am working a full-time job with a very long commute, and that means that a lot of the time I'm at work or on the train or on the bus or on the tram or on my bike. It is a very long commute, and that means that you're not going to get like a full 8 videos like I did last year. But I still plan to indulge a little bit. I've got one Jane Austen discussion video essay that I have had in the works since last year, so hopefully I'll have the time to finish that in time for this Jane Austen July. I have 1 or 2 fun video ideas for silly little things that, you know, we all enjoy every now and again. Some frivolous lady stuff. And maybe one of the books that I'm going to read in July will inspire the occasional book review. Remember book reviews. Those were the days. Now, I promised you a little sort of life update catch up at the end of this video. So if you're not interested in my life, fair enough, go and enjoy some Jane Austen. If you are, the major thing that happened in the last few weeks is that my cat Minerva passed away. Very suddenly. I mean, she was 11. 11 is an age where if you're a cat owner, you'll think that's an old lady. We noticed that she was getting a bit frail. What we didn't know until the very end is that she had an enormous lung tumour growing in her. So the end came very suddenly. Luckily, very peacefully. We had an amazing vet, and it still leaves us, by us I mean me and my husband Bill, leaves us a little bit grieving. She was such a special cat. Like, you can click on any of my old videos and the likelihood of Minerva just waltzing through the frame like she's the main character is quite high. In a way, I'm glad that I've had this channel because now I've got videos of her as well. But yeah, obviously she's going to be missed. We still have 1 cat, Beetle. He's a bit camera shy. That's why you might not even know that I have 2 cats. And he is sooner or later going to get a new friend because we are not and have never been a 1-cat household. So that was a tough thing that happened in the past few weeks. In other news, I'm still working my new job, which means I'm spending a lot of time not at home. I'm a homebody. I like being at home, so it's been stressful to be out of the house quite so much. This has reduced in the past few weeks since you know, I'm more established in the job and I can do more of my work from home. So that's a big help, and hopefully that means that in the future I will be a little bit less absent on BookTube, because I have missed this, talking to a camera and getting interrupted by the doorbell, and I want to do more of it. However, I have not really been reading that much. I think I had a period of reading a lot last year. Then I got this new job and then my brain was occupied with other things. Not just the job, by the way. I've been focusing a lot more on my music. I got a little certification, which means I am the lowest rank of choral conductor you can be. I've been learning to play the piano. That's good fun. My father-in-law, who is probably the most talented pianist I know, it just gave me one of his spare pianos. It's right there behind the camera. Been practicing that, enjoying it, been taking some singing lessons. So yeah, I've been shifting more into music as my creative outlet, and books have sort of fallen by the wayside. Jane Austen July has given me a new impetus. Is that the right word? Jane Austen July has given me a new impetus to start reading again. I've picked up a few new books. I also have plenty of books on my TBR that desperately want attention. So hoping that in the second half of the year, I'm going to get back into reading a little bit. I've got some half-finished video ideas on my laptop that I want to finish. And yeah, we'll see how I can balance everything. But as they say, watch this space. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Minerva, do you want to say something? Please say something.
That's too comfortable for her.
I don't want to make her uncomfortable. She's such a doll, like... How are you even a real cat? No, she's just purring. This will just have to do. Like, I'll just have to hope that it'll... Right. This is all we're gonna get from you, isn't it?
She's just happy looking at the brush.
She's just ridiculous. All right.